Okay, so, like, imagine this. You're walking down the street, right? And you see a vape pen just lying there on the sidewalk. Most of us, I think, would probably just keep walking.
Yeah, probably.
But what if I told you that that thing, that little vape pen, could actually be kind of like an environmental hazard? That's where this company GreenFlow comes in. They're all about the safe and compliant disposal of vapes. And their website is honestly super interesting. So today we're doing a deep dive into this whole world of vape disposal because it's way more complicated than you might think. One of the first things I point out on their site is that vapes can't just be, thrown away like regular trash. They have to be handled especially because of hazardous materials. And we know vapes have batteries in that liquid, but what makes them so risky?
Well, it's not just what's in them, but what happens when those things aren't, contained properly. Like those lithium-ion batteries, they can actually start fires, like in trash facilities, if they get crushed or punctured. And it's not just a potential risk, it's actually becoming a bigger and bigger problem. Then there's the e-liquid itself. I mean, we hear a lot about nicotine, but a lot of those flavorings and other things they put in there, we actually don't know the long-term environmental impact.
Wow.
If that stuff leaks into the soil or water, who knows what it could do, right?
So it's like a double whammy. You've got this potential fire hazard and all these chemicals we don't fully understand. No wonder GreenFlow has this really rigorous disposal process. They have it all laid out on their website, 4 steps: identification, transportation, processing, and documentation. It seems really thorough. One thing that stood out to me was how much they emphasize preventing leaks, like during transport. I mean, makes sense. A truck full of leaky vapes sounds like a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where all those regulations and safety protocols come in. GreenFlow has to follow all these rules, which, are there to protect the environment and the people handling this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If vapes aren't disposed of properly, that stuff can contaminate groundwater. It can be dangerous for wildlife. It can even put sanitation workers at risk.
Right. It's not just about GreenFlow looking bad if something goes wrong. It's a public health issue, too. But here's something I found interesting. GreenFlow's website also talks about how their services actually have benefits, like positive benefits, not just avoiding bad stuff. They have a whole section on key benefits. For example, they talk about customized service plans, so it's not like one solution for everyone. They work with different businesses to figure out what they need. Can you talk a bit about why that's important?
Yeah, it's recognizing that not all vapes are the same, and not all businesses using them are the same either. Like a vape shop is going to have totally different needs than a gas station that sells a few vapes. With customized plans, GreenFlow can make things more efficient, reduce waste.
Makes sense.
It's a way more sustainable approach than just doing the same thing for everyone.
Yeah, it's like, why would you throw everything in the trash and hope for the best when you can recycle properly? Okay, but let's zoom out a little. GreenFlow is on the front lines of this whole thing, right? Figuring out how to deal with all these vapes. But vaping is getting more and more popular, so can they actually keep up?
That's the big question. It really highlights this problem we have with new technologies in general. We're all quick to buy the latest gadgets, but we don't think about what happens when we're done with them. And if we don't want a future where everything's polluted with old vapes, we need to start thinking about disposal differently.
Totally.
It needs to be part of the whole life cycle of the product, and that takes everyone: manufacturers, consumers, and companies like GreenFlow.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, GreenFlow has this partnership with One Tree Planted. They plant a tree for every service they do. Now, I'm always a little suspicious of those give back programs. Is it just marketing, or is there actually some environmental benefit?
It's a good question. There's definitely a lot of greenwashing out there where companies just use this stuff as PR. But with GreenFlow, I think it's part of a larger effort. They're not just planting trees. They're also really focused on eco-friendly ways to process the vapes themselves.
Okay, so they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're not just talking about sustainability. They're trying to actually do it, which makes me wonder, what can we do as regular people to support companies that are doing this right?
That's a great question, and it's one we'll talk about more about after we take a quick break.
So we've talked about what GreenFlow does, but how do we fit into all of this, as individuals?
All right.
It's easy to feel like our choices don't really make a difference.
I get that. But honestly, even small things add up, right? Every vape that's disposed of properly is one less thing potentially harming the environment.
True. But one thing I'm always a little unsure about is the recycling aspect. GreenFlow mentions that they handle vapes from recycling programs, but what does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah, it's a little all over the place right now, to be honest.
Really?
Some cities might include vapes in their regular e-waste. but others might have specific drop-off spots. It's best to just check with your local government or waste management company. They should be able to tell you what to do in your area.
Right. Always good to check those local resources. But it sounds like there's definitely room for improvement. Like, make it as easy to recycle a vape as a plastic bottle or something.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be great.
And that's where we as consumers have to speak up. The more we demand clear information and easy recycling, the more likely companies and policymakers are to actually do something about it.
So it's not just our own actions, it's about pushing for bigger changes too. Seeing GreenFlow's website, how they break everything down, it got me thinking, are there other things we use every day that we should be handling more carefully, like stuff we just chuck in the trash without thinking?
Oh, absolutely. There are tons of things like that. Batteries, light bulbs, cleaning products, they all have stuff in them that can be harmful.
Yeah.
The good news is there's a lot of information out there now to help us figure it out.
Okay, good to know.
Websites like Earth-9 or the EPA have all sorts of details on how to dispose of things properly.
So it's all about, like, being more aware, doing a little research.
Exactly. It's about shifting how we think, We need to start thinking about the whole life of a product, not just when we're using it.
From purchase to disposal, kind of like being responsible for our stuff the whole way through.
Right.
Speaking of responsibility, GreenFlow planting a tree for each service. Do you think that kind of thing is becoming more common?
Definitely seeing it more and more.
Yeah.
Companies are starting to realize that sustainability is important.
You think it's genuine? Or is it just like marketing because people care about the environment now?
Probably a bit of both, to be honest.
Yeah, makes sense.
There's no denying consumers want sustainable products. But I do think many companies are starting to get it, that taking care of the environment is also good for business in the long run.
It's like, it shouldn't just be a marketing tactic. It should be how they actually operate. But, GreenFlow is just one company, and they're focused on vapes. What makes you hopeful that we can tackle this whole e-waste thing on a bigger scale?
That's a big question. Maybe we need to take a step back and really think about that.
So before we're talking about the whole e-waste problem and how to deal with it, long term.
Right.
It's a big one, but you said you're actually optimistic.
I am. I really am. And one of the biggest reasons is this idea of a circular economy.
Okay, now, for those of us who don't spend all day thinking about economics, what does that even mean?
It's a different way of looking at things. Instead of the old way of thinking, take, make, throw away, it's about keeping stuff in use for as long as possible.
Makes sense.
So with electronics, it's like designing them to last longer, to be fixed easier, and to be recycled more effectively.
Okay.
We're talking about taking those valuable materials from old devices and using them to make new ones, so less waste,
Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any companies actually doing this, like putting this circular economy idea into practice?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Some are making modular designs where you can just swap out parts instead of replacing the whole thing.
Oh, that's smart.
Others are using, get this, bioleaching to get precious metals out of circuit boards.
Bioleaching, what is that? Some kind of sci-fi thing.
Basically, they use microorganisms to extract the metals without harsh chemicals.
Wow, that's wild. It's really cool to hear about these new solutions, but how do we make this happen faster? Is it just about technology or is there more to it?
Technology helps, for sure, but we need the right policies too, right?
Yeah.
We need rules that encourage companies to design things sustainably, to be responsible for their products, even when they're done.
It's like that whole life cycle thing again.
Exactly. And people like us, we got to keep demanding better options.
Right, and support the companies that are already doing it right. It all ties together. Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive, to be honest. I never really thought much about vape disposal before, but it's connected to all these bigger issues.
It is. Sustainability, responsible consumption, even how we design technology in the first place.
It's a good reminder that even something small, like how we get rid of a vape, can have a real impact.
Absolutely. Every little bit matters.
So next time you finish with any device, don't just trash it. Do a little research, figure out the best way to recycle it or dispose of it responsibly. We got to take care of this planet,
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And that's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us. And a huge thank you to GreenFlow for inspiring this conversation and for all the work they're doing. Until next time, stay curious.